Thanks for joining us tonight for the candidate forum for House District 160 in Pennsylvania. Cathy Spahr and Craig Williams are running for this seat in the very important midterm elections. We invited both candidates to talk tonight. Unfortunately, are running Cathy Spahr in the very important midterm elections. We invited both candidates to talk tonight. Unfortunately, are running Cathy Spahr in the very important midterm elections. We invited both candidates to talk tonight. Unfortunately, are running Cathy Spahr in the very important midterm elections. Getting some feedback there. We invited both candidates to participate tonight. Unfortunately, only Cathy Spahr accepted this invitation. Craig Williams did not respond to multiple requests to attend this event. I'd like to introduce my organization first before we get started. My organization is called Promote the Vote. Promote the Vote PA is designed to educate, inform, and engage voters in the election process. One of our missions is to present candidates so that you can make your choice about who you want to vote for in this election. Tonight, we have an independent moderator who will be asking questions of Cathy Spahr. Her name is Bibianna Dussling. She is a supervisor in Middletown Township, and as a former Navy helicopter pilot, she is a veteran and a former member of the Republican Party. So we are trying to present as an independent a voice as we can for this forum. We took questions from the public in this to prepare for this forum, and she will be asking her own questions, and some of those questions will come from the public. So without further ado, I introduce Bibianna Dussling and Cathy Spahr and tonight's candidate forum.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bibianna Dussling. Deb already introduced me, give me a little idea of my background. So I'm going to be moderating tonight as far as speaking with Cathy. I'm honored to be part of this, what is a very valuable function, getting to know candidates prior to an election. So we have with us, as Deb mentioned, Cathy Spahr. I'd like to actually just start right out, Cathy, with just asking you to spend a little bit of time telling us about yourself and why you're running for state representative.
Sure. Thank you so much, Bibianna. I am Cathy Spahr, and I currently reside in Bethel Township. I live right next to the farmers market. I can actually walk there, which thank God it's only open twice a week because it wouldn't be good for the waistline. And I, for work, am currently a senior transportation planner with the Delaware County Planning Department. My whole goal as a senior transportation planner is to get people out of their cars and connected to other forms of mobility safely, which of course in Delaware County is quite a challenge, but I'm always up for a challenge. And prior to that, I worked for Newtown Township in Newtown Square, and I worked doing planning, zoning, and codes over there. I am very proud of the work that I did in local government working for Newtown Township because we moved the township to a place of transparency. My second day there, we got a right to know request, and I was told, oh, just give them a 30-day extension. And I said, but we have the information right in front of us. And I declined to give them a 30-day notice and sent them the information. It's really important that people get the information that they need. I am also a mom of twin boys. They are 13 years old. I had them through in vitro fertilization. I often joke around and say I got the Kmart Blue Light Special 2 for the price of 1. And I think the most important thing about me is that I am in long-term recovery. I've been sober for over 27 years, and that really dictates who I am as a person. It allows me to bring empathy to everything that I do. And it also requires that I have a pretty stringent moral compass. because our secrets keep us sick. So as a recovering addict and alcoholic, it's actually made me a better person than I could have ever dreamed of being. So I have no regrets over the path that I've taken in my life.
Wow. Thank you very much, Cathy. So now that you've given us an idea of who you are, if you could touch on, we know you're running against Craig Williams, who happens to be the incumbent. Okay.
Mhm.
So can you give us an idea then of how you see yourself differing, let's say in your voting record, and your approach to the office from Craig Williams?
Well, transparency is really, really important to me. And I intend to be very transparent about the votes that I take. And so that would be a significant difference between myself and Craig Williams. He has not been forthright or transparent about his voting record, which I find to be very frustrating. I think it's important that on critical votes and votes that people really care about, that it's important for the representative to be forthright and even solicit feedback from the public, because I'm not going there to represent me or my ideology or even my party. I'm going there to represent the district.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Now, since you mentioned that, what do you see as, say, the number one issue for your district?
So there are a lot of, yeah, so no, there's just so many things that we've heard at the doors, and it's changed. There's been a arc of change. When Roe v. Wade was overruled by the Supreme Court, that was a huge topic for a lot of people. We heard about that a lot at the doors. And after Uvalde, we heard about, people wanted common sense gun legislation and common sense gun safety. And we heard about that a lot at the doors. And we hear about the economy and inflation and gas prices. And of course, as a state representative, there's some things that we can do stuff about, and there are other things that are a little bit harder. I don't have the power to wave a magic wand and fix the economy or even stop inflation. That is an issue that's much larger than one of 203 people in the Pennsylvania State House, but also, in the world market. So I think that situation is really about ensuring that economic development is baked into every decision that's being made as much as it possibly can. And that's true from a transportation perspective as well. As a senior transportation planner, I always have to think about how transportation is going to impact the businesses. Is it going to improve access, or is it going to make access worse? And we always want to make access better, because if people can't get to the business, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's also important that we foster, an environment with policies where businesses want to come home, so that we can be less reliant on a global market and be more stable here in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Now you mentioned, you touched on a lot, you mentioned a lot of issues there. So, with there being so many issues on top of people's minds, how do you think you'll gauge, your constituents' feelings about a matter before voting on it?
Well, one thing I would really like to do, and has actually been requested of me at the doors, is that I put it out there to the people. If an important vote's coming up, and I'm not talking about naming a bridge, like I don't think we need to all weigh in on naming a bridge. But if common sense gun regulations came out for a vote, I'm happy to put that out there. Weigh in. Tell me what you think. Do you like this? Don't you like this? What are your concerns? Email me. Let me know. Call the office, please. I want to hear from you. And I know as a constituent, I have reached out multiple times through email mostly, and, weighed in on things without any response to know one way or the other. And I think it's just really, really important that we be responsive as best we can to the people. Now, this is a democracy, right? Mm-hmm. So we're all going to have different opinions, and we're going to have to go with the majority, because that's how a democracy works. It's not my way or the highway. It's a long-term thing, and it's compromise and it's incremental change. It's not these sweeping grand changes. And the health, safety, and welfare of the public always must be at the forefront of legislators' decisions.
So with that, and kind of given the very polarized environment we're in right now, and the state legislature, the makeup currently being what it is, how do you see yourself working to advance legislation or to affect change given the current environment and the makeup of the state legislature?
So as a planner, I deal with different opinions all the time. You deal with people who are the for group, you deal people with who are the against group. You deal with the constituents who don't understand what's happening. And we have to bring all of those stakeholders, all of those opinions to the table. We have to find consensus so we can move a plan forward or a project forward. And I think that's a skill set of mine that I actually have. And I practice on a regular basis that I want to take to Harrisburg. And I think, it's about listening. It's about being open-minded and not judgmental. And it's about being patient, which, obviously can be hard sometimes. But when we really listen to people, it can make a big, big change in how information is received and how we move forward with something.
Okay. So to drill down a little bit now into some specifics, like some specific issues. Education is on a lot of people's mind nowadays. In particular, the funding of education. How would you pursue funding education? Any changes to funding education? What is your take on that issue?
I would like to see Pennsylvania fully fund education in an equitable fashion. Now, we do have a fair funding formula that only applies to new funding money. It doesn't apply to money that school districts have always received, which leads to a lot of inequity because you have some districts who have shrunk in size and others who are growing in size, and it's not reflective of the current student population and student needs. And so I think we need to expand that fair funding formula to apply to all school funding money.
Okay, thank you. How about property taxes now? So it certainly figures into economic issues and such, but do you have what are your thoughts on any ways that we can address property taxes, potentially reducing property taxes?
Well, yeah, so that's always something that I hear at the doors, particularly from seniors. And I think, seniors bear the burden the most. And, frequently being on fixed incomes when property taxes go up, it really harms them. And I know in other states, they have a cap on property taxes. So once somebody turns, I think it's like 65, it wouldn't go up past that. So the amount, if it's $5,000 when they turn 65, that's what it'll be the rest of the time that they live in that property. And I think that's certainly something to consider, being that they are on fixed incomes, that allows them to plan better and, know what's coming down the pike. And I think that would be an interesting suggestion and thing to look at for property taxes in Pennsylvania. And it's always about revenue, right? And revenue is limited. Where are we going to pull more money from to cover our needs? And frequently it's taxes, right? Nobody wants their taxes raised. So what are the other opportunities to bring revenue in? We could close the Delaware loophole that allows corporations to not pay their fair share in taxes. that would always be an opportunity. Some people have floated a luxury tax. Some people have floated a progressive tax, but that would require a constitutional amendment in Pennsylvania. So I think it's a really complicated issue, and we need to be open to all potential solutions and suggestions. But it always gets hung up in the state legislature and doesn't go anywhere. It like disappears in the quagmire of the state house. You know,
I guess touching on that, what do you think? What do you think most people, in your opinion, don't understand about Harrisburg and the state legislature?
I think that they don't understand that. I think they don't understand that it's not the governor who does everything.
Okay.
You know, frequently, well, Governor Wolf did this or Governor Wolf did that. Okay, you know what? In when he does executive decisions, sure, executive orders, absolutely, that's him. But he isn't the guy who writes the laws. That's not him. It's not him. He signs them or he vetoes them. That's all he does. He can throw out policy ideas that he wants, or wish list of things and whatnot. Like, hello, the minimum wage has been one that he's always thrown out every year that he's been governor, and it's gone nowhere. It's the legislature that writes the laws and puts the laws forth for the governor to sign or veto. And so when people are not happy, I say, well, the legislature has been controlled by the Republicans for the last 28 of 30 years. So that might be something to think about. And that we waste an awful lot of time on bills that are going to go nowhere. And quite frankly, if the governor's going to veto it, do we really need to push that forward? Do we really need to push forward that heartbeat bill or that fetal remains bill? I mean, it's really just ends up being a waste of taxpayer money to spend time on things that aren't going to benefit anybody when they're just going to be vetoed. We could focus on some bipartisan legislation, but of course, one person controls the agenda, and that's the Speaker of the House. And if he doesn't like you or he doesn't like the bill, it's not getting voted on. And quite frankly, to give one person that much power is really, really ridiculous. It's a nice little kingdom with a fiefdom. Not really democracy.
Do you see yourself helping to break through that?
Well, yes, I would. I can say this right now. I am committed to, if I end up in Harrisburg, the first bill of the legislative cycle is always about the rules of the House and how business is conducted. And if that bill that's put forth is going to perpetuate the same BS that we have been putting up with for years, I'm not voting for it. I would like to see a government that works for the people and not just one person and one party.
Okay, fair enough. To touch on some of the, actually did mention one question before that was submitted, but to touch on some of our questions that were submitted from the public. Let's see, we're going to get into a few of them. So you mentioned, you did touch on the issue of abortion earlier. One of our submissions asks, how will you improve access to or preserve the right to abortion in Pennsylvania? Actually, we'll stop there. So how will you improve access to or preserve the right to abortion in Pennsylvania?
Well, I am definitely a pro-choice candidate. I really just feel that the government has no business in anybody's doctor's office, man or woman or child. I mean, that's a patient doctor relationship is sacrosanct, and nobody else belongs in there. What I can do to preserve a woman's right to choose is potentially limited. It depends really on what happens in November. I would love to say that, we can push forth and get this over the finish line and say that abortion is a constitutional right in Pennsylvania. But if we don't win the House and the Senate and the governor, that's just not going to happen. And even still, there are pro-life Democrats in Harrisburg, and we need a majority to get that over the finish line. So I'm not going to sit here and tell people that I'm gonna save this, but I will. If we don't win, and I'm in Harrisburg, I will always vote against anything that would restrict a woman's access to healthcare and reproductive services.
Okay, thank you. Next would be what policy solutions can we put forward to protect Pennsylvania from climate change? So the issue of climate change and what policy solutions you see to that.
So what I would like to do is as a planner, Pennsylvania doesn't have a plan. We don't have a plan. We don't have a plan about how we're going to build the infrastructure, where we're going to build the infrastructure, how we're going to fund building the infrastructure. We don't really have a plan, and we need a plan. And I would like to tax the frackers who only ever pay an impact fee in Pennsylvania, which is a one-time fee. And we are the only state that doesn't tax the frackers. I would like to tax the frackers and use that revenue to create the plan and implement a plan for renewable energy. By doing that, we can bring home a lot of really great jobs for Pennsylvanians and become more energy independent in the long run. And I would love to be less reliant on other countries and other states for our energy needs when we can do it right here on our own in Pennsylvania.
Okay. Let me ask you this about that. Kind of along the lines of not being reliant. We all kind of know if it's very hard once there is a source of revenue, right? Or with whether it be a tax, impact fee. Once there already is a source of revenue established for something, we can become reliant on it. If such a tax were imposed to support such policy changes and actions, do you see that as problematic as far as like having that revenue stream and the state being reliant and almost further instituting that industry, or how do you see that?
Well, I think because that money would be geared towards a project, renewable energy, and implementing and expanding that renewable energy, I think that once it's done, right? Mm-hmm. And even still, if we continue fracking beyond that point, which I would imagine that we will, additional revenue will go to maintaining all of that new renewable energy infrastructure, job training for a green energy economy as well.
Okay. All right. I believe you mentioned Uvalde earlier. How do you plan to address the issue of gun violence and gun control? There has been some legislation over the last couple of years or so put forward, that deemed common sense gun control just really hasn't gone anywhere. How do you plan to address the issue?
Again, that is an issue that is going to require a majority of legislators to agree on, which is difficult because you do have Democrats who are definitely pro Second Amendment without a whole lot of common sense. And so I think it's about finding that compromise, that happy medium. I personally don't think that expanding universal background checks is problematic. I don't think that an extreme risk protection order bill or red flag laws is problematic as long as the appropriate due process and any like revenge issues, like a girlfriend doing this for revenge or what have you, are addressed within the bill. I've heard a lot at the doors. People really, really want this. They want this. And it doesn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat or independent. They want this. It's very rare that I hear somebody say, no, I don't want that. I had a firearms instructor who is a Republican tell me that he would like to raise the assault weapons age to 25, and I was shocked. So people want this. They want their communities to be safe. But I also think that there are other programs that we can pursue that it can go beyond just guns and firearms. I think that we can look at clean and green vacant lot programs. Pennsylvania Horticultural Society has a great program in Philadelphia that's been very, very successful. And they go into neighborhoods and clean up lots and then maintain them. And they also use it for workforce development and job training. And I've been working with the Director of Public Defenders, Delaware County, Chris Welsh, to bring that program here to Delaware County and start getting that done in Chester, which would just be a great addition to some of the programs that Chester City and the DA's office have implemented there, and that have drastically reduced gun violence.
Okay, so it sounds like you think the focus has been a little too narrow when it comes to that issue as far as potential solutions.
I think we need a real hands-on deck approach.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So kind of along those lines, so how do you address claims that I do, coming from my background of having been a Republican previously and currently an independent, one of the things you always hear against Democrats is the Democrats don't prioritize safety. Even more recently, within the last few years, that you kind of using a broad stroke with Democrats not supporting funding of the police.
Right.
How do you answer those type of claims about safety and police funding?
So like that, that line of attack drives me nuts. It's like throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what sticks. I used to work with the Newtown Township Police. I've done GIS work with them. I actually worked with one officer to coordinate the Humane Society, the Code Department, and the police to go in to address a hoarding situation and mental health situation. So like our guys, our police, our men and women need to have everything to be safe out on the street. They need to have the training, the skills. They need the mental health support so that when they're not on duty, the horrible things that they see, they can address to make sure they're in tip-top shape when they're out on the street. I worked with Newtown when they went through the accreditation process at the federal and state level, and which they did at the same time, which is extraordinarily difficult. And they were the first department in Pennsylvania to accomplish that. And so I know what a top-notch police force looks like. I know what great leadership in a police department looks like. And I want to make sure all our police departments have all of those same opportunities. Now, the other thing to point out, though, is that the state legislature does not fund local police departments. Local police departments are funded by your local municipality and your taxes that you pay to your local municipality. Mm-hmm. So if anybody's going to defund the police, it would end up being at the very local level, not the state or federal level. Now, I could, as a state legislature, I guess, defund the state police, but I have no desire to do that. I actually want to make sure they have a regular source of revenue and funding stream, so we don't, keep robbing the liquid fuels to pay for our state police.
Well, with that, I mean, it's certainly not all municipalities, but there are some municipalities, including my own in Middletown Township, that do rely on the state police for that do not have their own police force. There has been some recent changes advanced as far as looking to address that funding issue and such. Any thoughts on that issue as far as municipality, the funding of the reliance on the state police?
So, yeah, I mean, a police department is extraordinarily expensive. It's well over half of any municipal budget. I think in Newtown, it was around 60% of the Newtown Township budget. And the only federal money they ever got was like maybe $2,000 in grants for Kevlar vests. So I think there are a bunch of ways that we could implement police departments locally. Like Middletown could go in with Concord and Chester Heights and Chadds Ford and do like a regional police department, which would help defray the costs. And that's always an option. When I lived out in the Harrisburg area, they had the West Shore Regional Police, which was a similar thing. So there are ways to do it. I know funding state police, Governor Wolf had floated the idea of a $25 a person tax for the municipalities that don't have police departments and rely on the state police. People weren't very happy about that, but $25 is pretty minor thing.
So you certainly you support funding the police.
I support funding the police.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit. Your website. Your website mentions specifically investing in our resiliency. What do you mean by investing in our resiliency? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, so I think resiliency looks at a bunch of different things, and that really came to me from COVID and how everybody was so impacted by COVID, and ensuring that we can bounce back stronger and better than before. But it addresses, I think it looks at small businesses, that we want them to be resilient through difficult times such as COVID. I think it looks at what's happening with climate change and the storms. And, the Brandywine River Museum was over $6 million in damages. Hank's Restaurant, which everybody loves, and the French toast there is amazing. Like, they destroyed, right? So we don't want these things to keep happening over and over again. And we need to make sure that when we're building, we're building smart, and we're thinking about what stormwater really is going to look like, and how that new building might impact stormwater. And also, I think, how we move forward with, are we going to be drill, baby, drill, or are we going to look at other options for energy?
Okay.
Drill, baby, drill. We're probably going to have more floods, a lot more, but.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. I'm just checking our time here. Looks like we're doing pretty well. Let's see. As far as, you touched on, we've talked about the district. Well, what do you, as far as HD, House District 160, tell us a little bit about the district itself. What do you see as, what are some of the top two, like, positive things about House District 160, or top two positive, let's see, the best things going on in House District 160 right now?
So I think House District 160 has some of the best school districts in Pennsylvania. And people live here because they want their kids to get a good education. And they are rabidly fanatic and supportive of their school districts, which I think is great. I love that. So we have Garnet Valley School District, which is the school district that I'm in. And then we also have Unionville Chadds Ford. And we also have Westchester School District. And I think it's really great. And our kids are so lucky, and our families are so lucky to have such strong school districts, so that we know our kids can grow up and be successful because they've had a really solid education.
Nice. Fantastic. And we already we touched on funding of education already. As far as funding, another issue though, so I guess expanding beyond House District 160 now, how do you think Pennsylvania could make healthcare more affordable? I know this is a larger issue, but any aspects of healthcare that you see being able to, affect change as a state representative, the costs involved?
Well, for me, my concern with healthcare, one of the areas that concerns me is how we handle addiction and substance use disorder. A friend of mine, Larry Arata, his son passed away due to addiction, and he showed up at a rehab facility sober, about 90 days sober, but he was having like an obsession and a compulsion to use, and the rehab turned him away.
Oh my God.
And addiction is a very complicated, powerful disease that needs support. And frequently we let the insurance, well, not frequently, we let the insurance companies dictate how people are going to get sober. But everybody's path to sobriety is different, and we need to put an end to that. If somebody needs 4 months in rehab, they need 4 months in rehab. If somebody only needs 30 days, they only need 30 days. But, they only give you so many bed days. And you have to be using to show up. And it's a much more complex issue. And the insurance companies dictate how we let people get sober. And that's just not right. People are dying because of it. And that is unacceptable to me, when it doesn't have to be like that. Frequently, I feel like our healthcare system is really a sick care system, because they tell us how we're going to be well. But that's not how it works. Everybody's different. I had a person tonight, when I was knocking doors, tell me that during COVID, Medicaid only gives you so many days in the hospital. And, the elderly take longer to recover from COVID. And so they were running out of bed days and getting kind of like kicked out onto the streets earlier. And this person works in the system. So she's a nurse. So she was able to fight that fight and, get her mother the help that she needed, the longer term help she needed to get back up on her feet and walking again. But most people don't know that process.
Right.
And we're really doing a disservice to the people and our elderly. I mean, the living beings that we love and care about, just we don't treat them well, right? Like we don't, right? And our elderly, and then the people who care for those people get a pittance, and I don't understand that. Like, our child care teachers get paid like $11 an hour. Maybe they're lucky if they get paid 15, and then the nurses taking care of grandma aren't getting paid well either. And it's like, really?
Well, and it certainly seems like one of those issues that, it's not, at least on the surface, it's not a partisan issue. Or at least shouldn't be a partisan issue. Do you see it? I mean, healthcare affordability, do you see that opportunity there as far as an issue that, both parties, independents can work together on?
I would like to think that we could, but I just feel like there's a reluctance of people and of politicians in general to come to the table. I mean, I know in 2010, my employer went bankrupt, and I had to put Julian and Charlie on insurance. And, Obamacare had come into play then. And I tried to do Obamacare, and like I made too little money to be eligible for Obamacare. So I had to go on Medicaid for Julian and Charlie. And I didn't get to keep our doctors, and the whole thing was very, very frustrating. And then the whole Medicaid process was a nightmare. I was literally on the phone every 6 months with Senator Ted Erickson's office, getting help from Mary to work with, the Department of Public Welfare, because they wouldn't answer the phones. They just didn't answer the phones. And then if they did answer the phones, they were very rude and treated you like scum of the earth. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, I have a bachelor's degree. I didn't ask for my employer to go bankrupt.
Mhm.
And right now I'm working on getting my master's degree. Like, I am trying to improve my life here.
Mhm.
And sometimes life just happens, but it was unbelievably frustrating.
Mhm.
And really,
It's very difficult to navigate and just
extremely
overwhelming.
difficult to navigate. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any issues, any other issues you hold dear to your heart that you want to make sure that your prospective constituents, or that the voters know where you stand on?
I don't know. I don't know if I can think of anything. I feel like I talk this all day long and all night and all day and every day. And
Knocking on doors.
yeah.
Anything in particular that, I guess you mentioned already, as far as the rules, like being addressed first, but anything beyond that you would, anything you hold dear, you would want to make sure was addressed as soon as possible?
Well, I mean, aside from choice,
Okay. Yeah.
I just want us to get back to a place where, it's about the people and not the party. I mean, I'll buck the system. I don't care. I don't have a problem
Okay.
causing a ruckus.
Very good.
So,
yep. As far as, and personally, as where I've been in my past, I appreciate that. I think people do get caught up a lot of times in the specific party politics. So anything to bring people back together, probably the most effective way to go about it.
well, we are the United States, and be hard pressed to see that right now, right? We're a melting pot, and we should be celebrating it, not fighting over our differences. So,
well, thank you very much. Definitely appreciate being here. Appreciate your time tonight. And
thank you, Bibianna, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. You are most welcome. Like I said, it's a very valuable part of the process, as far as constituents getting to know the candidates. And
absolutely, I was disappointed that when League of Women Voters reached out, Craig was unresponsive back in July and declined. He was unresponsive. So I was disappointed, because I really think that it's important for people to be able to ask me questions and get to know me. I'm an open book. I'm an open book. I don't.
Clearly.
I don't. Keep secrets. I haven't hidden anything. And I want people to feel like they can reach out to me and ask questions. And, I'm happy to share my thoughts or my experiences.
Okay. Well, this was a good step. Definitely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So I think we're going to bring Deb back.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for coming to our candidate forum tonight. I apologize for the technical problem at the beginning. That was solely my problem. I want to give some credit to the people who participated tonight. First of all, I want to give credit to Rob Cates for actually doing all the technical work to set this thing up. I really appreciate it, Rob. Thank you so much. I want to thank Bibianna Dussling, who moderated this forum. I really appreciate her taking the time to do this. And I want to thank Cathy Spahr for being here tonight. And generally, I want to thank everyone who's running for office and who's participating in our government. Our government doesn't function by itself, and many times we demonize what government is. But really government is your neighbor. It's your friends. These are people who are running your, your local government, your state government, and they're really putting themselves out there to do this. And I want to thank everyone who's running in this 2022 election. We will have more candidate forums before the midterm election takes place. Once again, thank you for watching tonight, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care.